The reason why I space out my videos and my blog posts in so many in between posts is that I only talk when I have something to say, and lately there's very little to say. A lot has been going on around the world, which I think is fulfillment of the times. Specifically, I don't know if but you could Google it now, and you'll see that a few months ago a few battleships equipped with everything went up in flames. I think the US lost a ship, Iran lost a ship, even Israel, I think so, but Israel has always been at war, so I don't think that was really new. But I believe it's important that we pay attention to what happened in the Persian Gulf, especially after the destruction of the Iranian ship. Reportedly, they had built one of the most equipped, the most advanced, expensive warship, which was burnt by somebody who did not deem it fit to announce to the world that they'd destroyed the Iranian warship. So what followed after that was a string of very interesting events. First of all, an Israeli ship was in around the, I think it was must have been along the Gulf of Eden or the Indian Ocean, but anyway, it was blown up. It was hit by a missile, to be specific. Later, after that, there was another ship. I don't think we ever found out the nationality. Probably Israeli, operational, because you know ships usually have various nationalities. You could find that it was bought in this country, but it's allowed to fly any flag from any nation, and some of the pirate ships can even use more than one flag to mask their identity. Can be registered in one country, and it's really confusing. But concerning that ship, that it was actually 6 ships that, and I think the news must be still online, that they were attacked in a very peculiar way, and they lost control basically of their ships. And after this happened, one of the ships that had lost control was later detected or seen heading towards the Persian Gulf. So this was just, it must have been just before the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan. But anyway, the most important thing that it's important to take note of is that there has since been events that we need to pay attention on. I've been saying for a while that we're living in a new season, and a lot has happened in the last few months to in demonstration of exactly that. And one of the most important aspects of this our current civilization, so to say, or you may call it an age, or you may call it a civilization, which I think may have started at around the time of the deposition of the Roman kingdom and of kings later and we are still in the same period. We are not very far, because the seeds that were planted at that time are now maturity. It's time for harvest now. So one of the most important aspects of the current civilization is the free flow of navigation, water navigation specifically, and the control of the seaways by the powerful nations of the world, including the United Nations. So one of the instruments that are used to govern the sea is there's a Law of the Sea Convention, which among many provisions declares that after about just a few kilometers off the coast, I think it's about 12 kilometers. Beyond that, no country is allowed to restrict movement. No country has authority over any vessel, except of course a few powerful nations that, after the coming into force of the convention, made some laws extending or establishing a different governance for their country in terms of the territory and delineation of the boundaries. So the laws do not apply the same way in all in the entire world, especially as regards to the territorial boundaries at sea. Specifically for the US, the US boundaries are governed by a different regime than what governs the rest of the countries. For the rest of us, we're governed by basically, as far as boundaries are concerned, we're governed by the law of the sea, and there are also decisions that come out from the International Court of Justice, which are in the process of interpreting these international laws. Okay. So one of the most important aspects of the law of the sea, the international law of the sea, is the openness of the ocean waters. Because if every country will only govern to 12 kilometers, that's, I think it's 12 miles, I'm not sure. It leaves a lot of space for commercial activities, including fishing, and also patrol by nations who can afford it. Up to now, the nations who could be able to patrol and to navigate, specifically using their navies, were the powerful nations of the world. So I'm saying all this to lay the foundation of the happenings of the Persian Gulf and of the Indian Ocean in the recent few months. By taking control of those 6 ships, what happened was a declaration of, it was almost a kind of a Cold War act. It's actually an act of war. It's actually an act of war, but not the usual wars that we used to, and of taking of waters by force, because you can imagine what will happen to many armies, to many navies from many countries, that just a few years ago, when piracy started off the coast of Somalia, many nations had offered to patrol, and there were some very powerful navy ships just along the off the coast of Somalia and East Africa in general, just patrolling. The Gulf of Eden and the Red Sea is a very, very important artery of international navigation. So It's a very important part of this story on the Indian Ocean. Is a very important part of this story, because otherwise, with the current technology, I mean the turbines, remember there's a time when we sailed without those things. With the current technology, without the Gulf of Eden, ships have to go around Africa, the other way around West Africa, where there's another problem with piracy, go around to South Africa, then go up if they wanted to go from Europe to China. So this is the importance of what happened on that day with the hijacking of those 6 ships. It has taken power from a lot of nations that were patrolling that place, because who would like an entire navy ship to be commandeered to a place up the Gulf of Eden, to probably a nation that was an enemy state to them. If you follow recent events, about a week or 2 ago, Russia and China and Iran have been doing exercises, navy exercises in the Indian Ocean. The reason is the US has altogether decided to shift its focus from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific, where there's this fight over territorial waters and freedom of navigation again between US and China. So the thing is, China is arguing that US ships should not be sailing so close to China. Remember, under the Law of the Sea Convention, the agreement or the treaty left coastal nation states a very small territory off their coasts, and under the Law of the Sea, navy ships have been given freedom just like other commercial ships, so you can understand. But remember, there's a time when I think Iran, during this whole debacle at the Gulf of Eden, there's a time when Iran took a ship, went all the way to the Atlantic, and the US gave them a warning that if they advance any further, it will be considered an act of war. So you can imagine, how do you balance between self-preservation or protection and freedom of navigation? And does the freedom of navigation that the United States expect to be granted in the South China Sea and in the Indian Ocean and Gulf of Eden, is it being challenged by nations that don't think that they have the same freedom when it comes to the Pacific and the Atlantic, especially when they are sailing very close to the United States? A few days ago, I think it was even yesterday, the US issued a warning to China because they were in the Atlantic, and in the opinion of the US, they were too close. So there we are. That is what is happening on the seas. You know, the thing about the seas is that a lot can go on, and it can pass without notice, because it's the wilderness. It's a desert of water. We only get what the cameras can find, but otherwise, there are no telephone masts out there where we can see everything that's going on.